Good evening. Thank you for joining me on day 4 of the 49th Toronto International Film Festival. I'm Robin Citizen, the Director of Programming for Festival and Cinematech here at TIFF, and I'm thrilled to present the world premiere of Christopher Andrews' Bring Them Down. First, a sincere thank you to our presenting sponsor, Rogers, and major sponsors, RBC and Visa, for their continued support. We'd also like to thank our government supporters, the Government of Ontario, Telefilm Canada, and the City of Toronto. Sure. Yeah. The Special Presentations program is made possible through the generous sponsorship of TikTok. And this program is recognized for celebrating the very best of contemporary cinema, all genres and styles from all corners of the world. The section showcases high-profile premieres and the world's leading filmmakers, like the film you'll see tonight. This film is eligible for the People's Choice Award, presented by Rogers. Please remember to vote for your favorite films at tiff.net/vote. We would like to thank Mubi and Charades for providing us with this film. And thank you to Screen Ireland for their generous support. We're also very happy to be hosting with us tonight the Consul General of Ireland, Miss Janice McGann. Christopher Andrews is a UK-based director. He's directed the short films Fire and Stalker, and written scripts for the upcoming films Cavendish and Frankenstein in Baghdad. Bringing Them Down is his feature debut, a visceral look at a feud between two families united in a past tragedy and the present fallout, chiefly navigated by Michael, Christopher Abbott in a fierce performance, and Jack, a very vulnerable Barry Keoghan. Please help me welcome to the stage director Christopher Andrews. And Christopher Abbott. Barry Keoghan. Nora Jane Noon. And Colm Meaney.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us for the world premiere of Bring Them Down. It's a real privilege to be here. It's such an amazing atmosphere outside. There's so much excitement and love for cinema. It's really such a joy. And I'd like to thank TIFF for inviting us to be part of the festival this year. This film is really special to me, and I really do hope that it connects with you this evening. It's really great that we've managed to get everybody here tonight. We've got Chris and Barry, Colm and NJ, and also we're the producers, and we've got some of the creative crew in the audience too. So, which is a real privilege, and it's going to be a real celebration of the film. I really look forward to talking to you all about it at the end of the movie. But until then, thank you again for making the effort to come, and enjoy the movie.
Thanks. Hello, thank you for sticking around. My name is Amari Kishodia. I'm part of the programming team here. Please welcome back Director Christopher Andrews. Christopher, you've got some guests with us.
Yeah, we've got we've got Christopher Abbott, and we've got Barry Keoghan. We've got Nora Jane Noon and Colm Meaney.
Thank you all for being here. I'm going to throw it to the audience in a second, but I want to get us started first. Christopher, tell us about, I think the obvious place to start is, what was the origin for this? Why did you want to make this movie? How did it come to you?
I was driving through the Lake District in the north of England New Year, and it was raining and looked beautiful, and it just felt like a underutilized location in the UK. And I was walking up there with my partner and saw this shepherd walking up, and he was like, we were all in wet weather gear and hiking boots, and he just had some rigger boots on and a florry, and he's whistling to his dog, and just felt like iconic character. And then I put that together with the parable of the Good Shepherd. You know, what happens if you bring down your sheep? You've got one lost soul, so you leave the saved souls. And then, you know, what if someone fucks with your sheep? And when you come back down. So yeah, and then there was this idea. There was actually what happened with the sheep was something that was happening in Cumbria and Derbyshire, where there was gangs going in and taking the hind legs of sheep. So it was sort of marrying those three elements together.
Right. I'd love to go down the cast, and it's so interesting that every character in this film has a very specific position in the orbit within the two families. Can you each talk about what were the first conversations you had with Christopher about your character and their place within this fight, if you want to call it that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, first of all, I just think Chris is such a great writer, and such a knack for sort of writing with a lot of restraint. And I think this movie has a lot of restraint, but kind of has that release just always at the right times. And watching it this time, it's sort of it felt even more fable-like than when I had seen it last, and I guess it's a very real setting, but there's something sort of magical, you know, about it, or some sort of like hyper-realism. But you know, in terms of talking about the character, you know, it's been a while. I don't remember our conversations. I mean, you know. I mean, honestly, there's so many technical things I kind of had to figure out. I mean, even just...
Yeah, can you talk about the difficulties of performing in another language? How deep down the rabbit hole did you go of learning Irish?
I mean, I'm not, you know...
He knows more Irish than me anyways.
Yeah. I mean, I don't remember much, you know, so I can't say I'm fluent, but, you know, I had to learn what I had to learn and whatever, the accent and all that. And even just a lot of technical things, you know, just working with sheep. You know what I mean? I mean, some of the hardest things were just trying to command this dog to, like, you know, like her. You know, it was so it was a challenge, and sort of wild to just try it. But you know, I appreciate Chris for letting me, and yeah, I had a grand old time.
That's great.
Grand old time.
He's sounding the part. Barry, tell us about your first reaction to the script.
I loved it from the get-go, and you know, I painted a certain picture and got to bring me home, and you know, visually was beautiful as well. Like, you know, the lookbook and that you sent, and but again, I wanted to do something a bit more intimate and a bit more, you know, intense and a bit physical, and wanted to kind of step into a character that was a bit more fragile and a bit younger, and kind of go there with it. But as for the chats that we had, I mean, it was more about Jack kind of stepping up, you know, for his father, and that, you know, trying to constantly, you know, impress him, and that was our aim, as far as I can remember.
Yeah. Norjane, you had your character has a very specific place within all of this. Can you talk about that, and you know, how you came into this dynamic?
Well, I mean, the fact that all of these guys were involved and the script was so powerful was really exciting. And I think what I love so much about reading the script is that you make so many assumptions about all of these characters first off, and then Chris surprises you constantly. You know, you see the flip side. And that's with Caroline as well. You know, she's kind of the heart in some kind of way. She's loved all of these men, and connects them and brings out the vulnerability. But then you see her unleash all of this pent-up anger that she's been surrounded by for years, and that's what happens to people, right? You know, you can't live in it and not be affected by it. So seeing a woman act out in that way was really exciting for me as well.
Right, great. And Colm, you know, yeah, let's hear it. There's lots of little hints we get to, you know, the backstory of what's happened between these two families. And did you talk about those things in any specific details, or was it more broad and you approached it in a simpler way for your character?
No, I mean, it was pretty much all there in the script. You know, I mean, Chris and I did have conversations about, you know, what his marriage might have been like. But obviously, we learn through as the narrative unfolds, which is wonderful, the way the narrative moves forward and then goes back and explains, you know, the back and forth of it, and the I don't know. It's quote Donald Trump. It's the weave. It's the weave that you do, Chris. You know.
Thank you.
But no, but it's extraordinary. It's wonderful, and I mean, I think it's all pretty much explained. I mean, his wife was going to leave him. He didn't know. So as far as he's concerned, his wife just died in a car accident, and he's perfect. You know, I mean, he did nothing wrong, and it's all because of that fucking gate. You know, but and the script did have that wonderful sense of it being a parable. You know, because of the gate, all this happened.
Yeah.
You know, that's the way it's a way of looking at it, you know.
It absolutely is. Chris, I want to come back to you and talk to you a little bit about the cinematography. You know, it's very tempting to describe this film as a dual perspective movie with, you know, Michael's story and Jack's story. But when I was watching it again, the very beginning, I realized there's a third perspective, which is of the women. You know, at the beginning, we're just looking at the women and we're not looking at Mikey. So can you talk a little bit about how you approached, did you approach the different segments differently at all? Or was there a kind of umbrella?
Yeah, we started with a very it sort of mirrored the language. So we start with very static images, and then when Chris gets to the mart, we start to track and dolly, and then when he steps into the field, after he's brought the sheep down, then we go handheld, and then we go into handheld with Jack. So you've got this kind of idea of like Chris is very sort of. He's in his place. He feels connected to the landscape, but he's kind of trapped, you know, and he's sort of stuck in this world. But he feels safe in it. And then as you know, as it unfurls and he's sort of moving forward into this mystery, it becomes more unbalanced and more untethered. And then when we meet Jack, we continue with handheld and we push the other way, so he's free and he's fluid. And then the further he goes into the story, and his behaviour and his actions become more unhinged and more errant, that we start to change the language until he's very rigid and he's trapped in a prison of his own making. Mm-hmm. So you know, it's a very conscious decision. It would not have worked when we like laid it all out. We realised that the structure didn't work, but thankfully it did.
So that's interesting. Was the structure always there to go with Mikey's story first and then Jack, or? Yeah,
I mean, I wrote the script and I wrote it from Michael's perspective, and then I was Ivana McKinnon, producer, we would like just sort of talking about it, and I was just frustrated with that. Every time I just didn't want to go back and forth and create this kind of. I wanted there to be. There's no good guys and no bad guys, right? It's like life. Everybody's grey. Everybody's got a hand in everything that's going on, and I wanted to show these things. But every time I tried to sort of flip between them, you got a sense that this person was right and this person was wrong, and that wasn't how I felt about the story. And I was like, I just really want to show that separately. And Ivana was like, well, you just show it separately. And I was like, okay. So then we did, and it was just a brilliant idea that she had, and yeah, so. I just structured it that way.
And it has a really amazing effect because when we get to Jack's story, there's such a sensitivity that we discover about him that we had no idea about in the first half of the film. Did you guys talk about leaning into that at all, or was it kind of implicit and obvious when you were working on it?
Not really. I mean, like with Chris and Barry, they're so emotionally intelligent and so instinctive as actors. We talked about the character. What was in the page, we just talked about the character quite simply, and they just got it. And then it was just a matter of stepping back and allowing them to become the characters, and they did. You know, it's like, and every time they do something, it's exciting and unexpected, and that just makes it, you know, more alive. So once we talked about it, I don't think we talked much about it through the process, really. I talked to Chris once about it. He's like, Christ, you say too much. So I was like, well, I don't say anything. I was like, where am I in this scene? And then I started recalling like everything that I'd done before. I was like, no, I didn't. Just where am I now?
Right. So this is your first feature, Chris.
Yeah.
but you've directed before. What was it like approaching such a big project? Was the transition easy? What was the most challenging thing?
It's like weirdly I felt really calm. I was like when I was making short films, it felt like I was really stressed and nervous. But you know, to be a debut filmmaker, there's a lot of pressure. You know, what does it mean? How is it going to move me forward? Is it, you know, I'm going to like just disappear, or the film disappear? But you like just, you know, they're amazing. So it kind of took the pressure off a little bit because they're just amazing. So you just have to make sure that you're getting through your shots. You get a momentum. So it was more about you talk to everybody at the beginning, you set it all up, and then you just about managing the day and responding to what they do, and try to, you know, tell the story in a good way.
Great. Okay, we're going to open it up to some audience questions. If you raise your hand nice and high, I'm going to try to repeat your question so that everyone can hear. Who's got a question? Shout out if I can't see you. Yes, up there in the balcony. Go ahead. So, Chris, your actor goes through a lot of craziness, but also compassion. Can you talk about how you kept that character grounded, if you viewed it in those terms?
Well, I mean, you know, I think just tonally the film is, again, it's sort of a grounding film. I mean, you know, those kind of levels are like hard to plan or really think of. It just, I don't know. My approach, and with Chris, I think, is you just sort of take it scene by scene and sort of play with the levels. And you know, you read the script, and I mean, it's there in the script, really. You know, I mean, yeah, I know it's a tough one to answer. I didn't think of it as like sort of extremes in that way. It's just the scene was the scene, so you play it. You know, that's simple, but that's kind of all I know.
Great.
Yeah.
More questions? Yes, right here in the blue.
Fantastic film. One thing that I noticed when I was watching it, at least when you're looking at two different perspectives, is that it shows that there's very little room for nuance when you're dealing with like these large scale family feuds. I wanted to know if that was a function of the structure that you intended, or if that's just something that kind of sticks out based on how it is.
So a question about maybe nuance in the dynamic between the two families, and it's almost kind of like a story of escalation. Did you think about it in those terms? Did you think about why they can't have a conversation about this kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like it's a story where I'm from. I think it's kind of a problem that we have of communication, of really being able to communicate, and certainly men that I know and where I was brought up. This is quite a personal story for me. It's about my families and their inability to talk, and little things that just sort of fester and grow into something that's ludicrous. And you know, as a child growing up in a world where you're seeing all this extreme behaviour, and when you grow up and you get to the core of why it happened, it's ludicrous. And so it's about the lack of communication, the inability to communicate. You know, in a world where people start wars, and you know, what does it take to finish a war? It takes saying sorry. It takes, you know, holding your hand up, and it seems so easy and so simple, but seemingly impossible as well.
We're running out of time, but I want to try and get in at least two more questions. Yes, in the front row.
Mr. Abbott, I was wondering, at one point in the movie or another, you carry almost every person physically, and sheep and dogs. And what about the physical part of your movie?
Yeah, tell us a little bit about the physicality of it, having to carry you know, so many people.
Well, no, it's good that you noticed that. I mean, it's sort of. Well, I don't mean for my. I don't mean. I did a load of push-ups and no, but you know, I mean, it's very allegorical. You know, that sort of theme that goes throughout the. And you know, I love that about this movie. It's like, you know, it's so much story is sort of represented in this seemingly simple physical motion of just constantly carrying and, you know, bearing, like, you know, whether you can say bearing the weight on emotional weight on your shoulders or whatever, represented in this physical way. And I just think it's such a beautiful sentiment. In terms of the actual physicality, I mean, sometimes the sheep was fake on my shoulders, so I just acted like it was heavy. I didn't really carry Column, I carried you a bit, but it was edited so that I didn't actually go all the way down the mountain,
Felt like it.
You're at the top, and then you just cut to the bottom, and then
It wasn't method.
Yeah.
Okay. Time for one last quick question. Yes, right here. Go ahead.
These characters are so interesting for the actors. Have you discovered something new about yourself while playing them?
Have you discovered anything new about yourself while playing these characters?
Okay.
Or maybe about the process, if you want to make it more broad.
Well, you're probably better off letting your anger out in small increments, not letting it build to that point. Just that you're a product of your environment, but I don't know if it was anything new. But it just makes you think about those things a little more deeply.
Okay, great. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have. Thank you for being here. Let's hear it one more time.